A woman humiliates a man in a store.
She doesn't know who he really is. The afternoon sun flooded the streets with a warm golden light, enveloping the city in a soothing but almost oppressive heat. The cobbled streets of the shopping center, the vibrant heart of the city, seemed to live to the rhythm of the hurried steps of passers-by, who circulated in great haste, or strolled with that nonchalance that one reserves for moments when one lacks nothing. The mall itself was a microcosm of opulence, a luxury capsule pulsing with energy, its interior bathed in the dim glow of glittering signs. Each window, each illuminated panel seemed to attract customers like butterflies around a candle flame, captivated by promises of purchases, instant pleasure, and social status. The most prestigious fashion brands stood proudly, each golden logo a promise of power and distinction. The air was saturated with exquisite smells, the subtle scent of leather handbags, the captivating scent of luxury cosmetics, and, further away, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee from the trendy cafes on the corners of the aisles. Everything seemed to combine to create a palpable atmosphere where wealth and eliteness were almost tangible. It was a world that unfolded in careful perfection, a world where every detail seemed to have been designed to exalt the idea of superiority, class, and absolute control. And in this world, Sophie felt at home. She was not just a spectator there, she was a leading actress. Dressed in a pastel-toned silk dress, cut with such precision that it made her appear more elegant than she was, Sophie made her way between the displays of the big brands, looking confident, almost sovereign. She moved with a rhythmic step, her heels clicking lightly on the polished marble floors, emitting a symbolic echo of her status. Her movements were measured, calculated, like those of a master in a field in which she had always had mastery. Every corner of this shopping center seemed to belong to him. Each item in the window was a possibility of comfort, of immediate pleasure, but also a silent affirmation of his place in this world. The other customers, many of whom lost themselves in contemplation of the products, were invisible to her. Sophie was in her element, surrounded by objects that she could buy without even thinking about it, with this reassuring feeling that everything that was there existed simply to confirm that she was part of an exclusive circle, a circle where judgments were made by the yardstick of wealth and power. Although young, Sophie had managed to establish herself in the most closed social circles. She had learned to read others like an open book, to perceive their flaws, their insecurities and their desires, with an almost clinical finesse. Her smile, always impeccably controlled, was a weapon that she knew how to use with such precision that she could turn it into a formidable weapon. A gentle smile, but deep down, like a sharp blade that knew where to strike to put the other in a weak position. She never showed the slightest trace of vulnerability, neither in her gestures nor in her words. Through his eyes, everything was calculated, everything was under control. She knew how to observe, analyze, and judge in the blink of an eye. That morning, she had come for a very specific reason. She wanted to buy a new outfit for a social event, a dinner with influential people from the business world. She had no intention of wasting time wandering around or thinking about her purchases. She knew exactly what she wanted. A dress. An outfit that would speak for her, that would represent her authority and her success. A piece that she could wear proudly and which would be an investment in her image. There was no room for uncertainty, nor for contemplation. It wasn't that kind of moment. But that day, something was going to disrupt this balance. As she was about to enter one of the most prestigious stores in this shopping center, a man caught her attention. He was there, a little apart, making his way between the shelves, a bit like a specter in this dazzling luxury environment. He wore a simple beige cotton shirt and dark pants, without the slightest mark that betrayed his belonging to this world. He seemed slightly lost, like a stranger in a place he should never have been. Unlike the other customers who moved with the confidence of those who know they can afford everything they look at, this man gave off an impression of embarrassment, as if he was aware of his unsuitability for this place. Sophie, her eyes shining with curiosity tinged with disdain, observed the man for a moment. Everything about him, from his appearance to his behavior, betrayed a form of uncertainty, an almost palpable naivety. He did not at all correspond to the criteria she considered to be a good customer, one who knows what he wants and, above all, one who is in his place. His clothes were not designer pieces from prestigious brands. He didn't have the look of those who stand on the same pedestal as her. He was strange, too simple, too discreet. She judged him immediately, feeling superior in that moment. This thought crossed his mind with the speed of lightning. He has nothing to do here. It was then that she decided to approach him. Her gaze, both superior and almost paternalistic, fixed on him, and she advanced with a confident step. Every movement of his body seemed calculated, and his smile, although polite, hid a hint of contempt lurking beneath the surface. She was ready to exercise her judgment, to remind this man of his place in the social hierarchy. After all, he couldn't ignore that he was in a sanctuary where the elite were supposed to recognize each other. "Are you looking for something specific, sir?" Sophie asked, her tone casual, almost condescending. The man slowly turned his head towards her, as if he had just woken from a dream. His eyes, almost unreal blue, seemed to probe his face. He didn't react immediately, but when he spoke, his voice, calm and measured, did not tremble. "Yes, I'm looking for a jacket." Sophie, with an almost imperceptible smile, made an elegant gesture towards the shelves where pieces from the biggest brands were displayed. "I doubt you'll find anything in this range, sir," she said icily, gesturing at the clothes with a disapproving pout. "These pieces are quite high-end. Maybe you should try another store." She paused, savoring the perfect execution of her judgment. A flash of sarcasm crossed her eyes, and she added, looking falsely kind, "Or you could ask for a little help if you don't know what to look for." She knew that this remark, subtly condescending, would leave a mark. She was used to it, and that was why she was here, in this world that she controlled with a confidence that made her untouchable. The man did not respond immediately. He stared at her for a moment, as if he were weighing every word, every gesture. But, contrary to what Sophie expected, he was not troubled.
Not a word, not an angry gesture, nothing.
Instead, he slowly turned back to the clothes, observing each piece with a disconcerting calm. His look was not that of an intimidated man, on the contrary. He exuded a sort of quiet serenity. Sophie, a little destabilized by this unexpected reaction, suddenly felt a little less sure of herself. But she quickly chased the thought away and turned on her heel, satisfied with having made her comment. She walked over to the counter to pay for her purchases, her mind already busy with the next part of her day. But something, a small detail, clung to his mind. She couldn't shake the strange feeling that there was something unexpected about this man, a calm insensitivity to his attacks. This wasn't the first time she had humiliated someone, but this time something was different. She shook her head, almost blaming herself for letting a stranger disturb her comfort. However, as she was waiting to check out, she saw the man again, but this time he was heading towards the principal's office. Intrigued, and a little driven by a curiosity that she couldn't repress, Sophie sneaked in discreetly, trying to understand what he was doing. She stopped far enough away to hear without being seen, and what she heard almost made her jump. "I would like to speak to the person in charge," the man said in a firm, calm voice, but full of indisputable authority. Sophie suddenly froze, her heart beating faster, a growing feeling of helplessness. There was no hesitation in his voice. It was not the tone of an ordinary customer. It was that of someone waiting to be listened to. The director, a seemingly nervous young man, seemed disoriented for a moment before responding, stammering slightly. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand." He hesitated. The man didn't seem to mind. He continued in a confident, almost icy voice. "You understand perfectly. I am one of the largest investors in the luxury and fashion sector. You have terrible service. The kind of contempt your saleswoman showed me has no place here. I will buy this store and make sure it is run well, or it will close." Sophie, who had started to creep slowly towards the door, stopped abruptly, her mind spinning in a loop. She couldn't believe her ears. She suddenly felt completely cut off from the world around her, as if everything had frozen. She had heard a truth she would never have imagined. The man she had humiliated, this man she had looked down on, was none other than Gabriel Duval, one of the greatest fashion moguls, owner of several renowned fashion houses, a man whose name was frequently whispered in the most exclusive and influential circles. Sophie felt a wave of heat rising inside her, but it wasn't that of excitement. It was a flood of shame, a tsunami of realizations that washed over her. She stood there, motionless, as if petrified, the words of Gabriel Duval echoing in her head. "I will buy this store." She realized that she had just played with fate, that she had unknowingly provoked the most influential man in the store, the one whose name was whispered in elite circles. She suddenly felt transparent, reduced to her simple insignificance in this world she thought she controlled. She had believed that she had the power to judge, to humiliate, but the truth, the one that struck her hardest, was that this man, this simple customer, had always been in a position of strength. When Gabriel finally turned to Sophie, his gaze was implacably clear, direct and unwavering. She felt a shiver of unease pass through her, but she couldn't look away. Her deep pupils did not seek to accuse, but they pierced with such precision that they seemed to reveal everything she had ignored in her judgment. There was no trace of anger or resentment in his eyes, just an immense tranquility, a kind of calm wisdom that seemed to emanate from him like a subtle veil. It was a wisdom that Sophie had never encountered, neither in the elite circles to which she belonged, nor among the people she encountered daily. This serenity, almost destabilizing, made her suddenly feel small, like a child caught at fault. He didn't need to express himself further. His actions had already done all the work. The humiliation she had sought to inflict had been reversed with almost silent simplicity and authority. Time seemed to stand still, and Sophie, despite her impassive exterior, felt a warmth rising within her, a painful recognition of the false position she had held. "You judged me by my appearance," Gabriel said, his voice soft but firm. He spoke almost as if everything that had happened was just another chapter in his life. There was no hatred in his words, only quiet truth. "And it showed exactly what you are." He stared at her, and this sentence, so simple in appearance, seemed to resonate throughout the space around her. Sophie felt a cold chill, as if the reality of her actions was finally catching up with her. Gabriel didn't seem to wait for a response. A slight smile appeared on his lips, but it was not cruel. This smile had nothing mocking, nothing venomous. It was a smile that came from within, like that of a man who had learned, over the years, not to respond to hatred with hatred, to let others discover themselves in their mistakes. It was not a smile of superiority, but a smile of someone who knew that true strength does not lie in humiliating another, but in the ability to stand firm without letting oneself be defeated. "I hope you learn a lesson from this," he added with a gentleness that might have seemed almost benevolent if the atmosphere had not been so tense. "But I doubt it will make much difference in your life." His words, however light, hit Sophie hard. She felt as if she were caught in an invisible net, unable to free herself from the grip of this truth that she did not want to admit. He didn't need to say more. Everything was already said in this simple exchange, in this silent confrontation. The director, still obviously embarrassed by the situation, then turned to Gabriel. The words exchanged between them were blurred, but it was clear that something major was happening. Gabriel, always so calm and in control of the situation, did not need to force to get what he wanted. He finally stood up, his departure as silent as his presence, and walked away without another word. Sophie stood there, frozen, unable to react. She felt stuck in a spiral of confusion and shame, unable to fully comprehend what had just happened. The following days were strange and heavy with meaning. The store temporarily closed its doors for what was advertised as a renewal. A discreet sign hung in the window. Sophie, despite herself, felt overcome by a growing unease. Rumors began to circulate in the community. There were whispers about what really happened that day, and little by little the truth came to light. Gabriel Duval, the same man she had judged so coldly, had bought the store, but not at any price. The sale was not easy. It came with strict and unforgiving conditions. The first of these was a complete management restructuring. New staff had been put in place with the mission of improving customer service, but also of establishing strict ethical standards. Sophie knew deep down that she was part of the reason these changes had taken place. His own actions, his arrogance, His certainty of being above everything had contributed to this collapse. The resonance of his mistakes hit him like a hammer blow. The world she had built around her image as a ruthless saleswoman had just collapsed. But what disturbed her even more was the realization of the lesson she had just learned. She had believed for so long that the superficiality of her judgments was what allowed her to stand out, to keep a distance from others. She had placed all her confidence in this exterior facade, in her power to manipulate perceptions, to humiliate those who seemed inferior to her. Yet she barely understood what had just happened. This lesson in humility that she had received from a man whom she had considered insignificant, and who in reality had surpassed her in many respects, was going to be difficult to integrate. The idea that she could change, that she could actually look at others without prejudice, seemed almost inconceivable. Gabriel's lesson, that quiet wisdom, dawned on her, and Sophie knew, somewhere deep inside, that she could never go back to her old way of being. The question now was whether she would be able to redefine herself, to find a new way of living in this world that she had thought she dominated. But deep down, a certainty was slowly forming within her. There were lessons that only a man like Gabriel could teach her, and it was too late to ignore them.